What is up, YouTube? What is up, Canada? Matt McKeever here. And today, well, it's Tuesday. I've got my yellow hat on. So we're going to be talking about cryptocurrencies. Usually we talk a lot about Bitcoin. We're still going to talk about Bitcoin today. We're going to touch upon Taproot. And again, if you guys are an expert on this, jump in the comment section. Feel free to share your information, your perspective, and as well as the resources that you like to go and learn about these things, because this is definitely new to me. It sounds like it's also a little new to Tim. So both of us are just going to kind of explain our perspective and the general concept behind it. But then I also want to talk about what's been going on with altcoins. So like whether you've been following Dogecoin, whether you've been following ETH, it seems like a crazy time. I mean, do you think will Dogecoin flip Binance coin? Because that would be an interesting era in and of itself. And then finally, I want to talk about the recent NFT drop, Meepit from the Larva Labs team. And we're also going to quickly touch upon Gary V's NFT that he's actually dropping tomorrow. I'm actually sitting on a pretty good stack of ETH because I'm long on pretty much anything Gary V, but especially this NFT project. I feel like he's going to pull something out special, but we'll find out. Maybe I'm just being scammed out of my ETH. But anyways, let's bring Tim on. And how's it going, Tim?
It's going great. Is it safe to look yet at my Bitcoin price?
Yeah, it's like as long as you're not comparing it to other altcoins, it's safe to look. Otherwise, it might be a little bit of a stomach punch right now. But
oh yeah,
before we even get into talking about Taproot or anything else, I do want to just say we were chatting before the show, and Tim was asking me, how are the NFTs or a little bit of the ETH you're playing with going, and in theory, it's going really well for me, but I couldn't tell you what we're doing or why it makes sense or how to replicate the success we've had up until this point. It was just buy at a price that seemed too expensive and then see it go higher. And that's kind of where we stand. But anyways, let's talk about something that's very interesting long-term, especially in the Bitcoin world, and that's Taproot. So yeah, what should we know about, Tim? And do you want your screen share up here?
Yeah, let's fire up the screen share.
All right.
So Bitcoin wouldn't be Bitcoin's price is exciting and is typically what draws people in. But then we have this joke, which is that when the price craters eventually, theoretically, that might happen, we're all then in it for the technology. And that's the refrain. So I'm in it for the technology. That's why I did a master's degree in digital currency. And it's not technology if it's not continuously upgrading itself or that there isn't a path for upgrades. And while you're probably used to just, plugging your cell phone in at night and then waking up to all of the apps being updated automatically for you, the path for Bitcoin to upgrade itself is not quite as easy because it's entirely decentralized. No one is going to force you to run Bitcoin software that you're not interested in running, and no one's going to force you to own altcoins that you don't want to own. It's just a totally different method of deploying technology. So what I wanted to quickly touch on to build it into our conversation about Taproot is, how do you upgrade the Bitcoin network? Like, how do you make this technology, which we all know and love, even more powerful and even stronger than before? And I just brought this up, which is forkdrop.io, which shows that there are 105 Bitcoin fork projects already. 74 are considered active. And you might recognize one or two, which have sort of stuck around, but most of this stuff is garbage. And so you'll think, okay, well, then that's not how we're going to do it. How are we going to do it? And the answer is actually with hard and soft forks. And you'll prefer hard forks when you're eating dinner and soft forks for Bitcoin. So these are the sort of two main upgrade mechanisms for Bitcoin. Again, hard fork and soft fork. Soft forks are typically backwards compatible, and they're usually a tightening of the rules, the consensus rules for Bitcoin. Hard forks are a loosening of the rules, and it typically renders it incompatible with previous versions of Bitcoin. So what we were seeing there with those 75 forks were typically hard forks, meaning that no longer works with Bitcoin. And one of the ways to think about it is this example of a vegetarian restaurant. If they become vegan, that's okay. Vegetarians can still eat there, no problem. But if it's the alternative, where a vegan restaurant only wants to be vegetarian, that is, let's say they want to cook with eggs and butter, then it's no longer cool for vegans to eat there. They're just not going to do it. And so what Taproot is, the process by which we're enabling Taproot is with a soft fork, meaning that anyone who's been using the existing terms and conditions, let's call them, the consensus for Bitcoin, they'll still be able to make use of the Bitcoin exactly the same way they could before, no problem. But for those that want to, they'll have the addition of additional features using Taproot. And we can take a look here. This is taproot.watch, and I'll try and make that a bit bigger, showing the signaling from the blocks, and that this needs, if you think that, okay, for elections, we need 50% or 50% plus one, to make Taproot a reality, we're looking for 90% consensus. And you may be thinking, well, what does Taproot even do? And this is a very small change to Bitcoin where we'll use a different signature scheme. So if you think about the example of like our regular check, like if you're in the generation that ever wrote a check, the signature field is only so big on the check. And usually on the other side of that is the memo field. Well, if we can shrink the signature field, we can write a longer memo, meaning that we can either create more transactions in each Bitcoin block, increasing the throughput, or we could provide other information that's relevant to our economic interests, such as one of the largest ones is the signature aggregation that Taproot will allow. And basically meaning that all of the benefits that you enjoy for Bitcoin as an individual can now be used on larger organizations. So if you're a club, a service organization, a corporation, or a government, you could use larger schemes of signatures. So to say, do elections again, if you need 50% plus one, well, you're going to need a lot of people signing to make that transaction a reality. And so that's what Taproot is aiming to do with its soft fork. They're going to replace the signature scheme from ECDSA to Schnorr signatures. And you'll think, well, why didn't they use Schnorr signatures before? And it was simply because that was a protected by intellectual property rights until this year, I think, or actually a couple of years ago.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And so it's a more compact signature scheme. It's, again, better for aggregation of signatures, meaning that multiple people can sign for multiple amounts of money, or you can set the threshold for how many people can sign. And it's also smaller. So again, it fits more data in every transaction or in every block. So that's what we're waiting for. As these go, and we've only got about 12 years of data, this is a fairly non-controversial upgrade to Bitcoin, but yet at the same time, we've not yet reached that 90% threshold in this rolling number of 2016 blocks. And so this is right now the speedy trial. This is trying to get this passed, if you could imagine it like politics, trying to get the bill passed as quickly as possible, if it will be able to be passed. And if not, as Bitcoin users, we'll go back to the drawing board to say, how can we convince people that this is the right way to go? And basically decide for them potentially. If all of the users of Bitcoin, the people that run nodes, want to run Taproot software, that may force the miners to agree. They'll just see that they're on the wrong side of history, or they'll join the consensus by coming along. But not quite there yet.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate that deep dive into Taproot. And so for anyone else, again, that if you want to learn more about it, dive deeper into it, we really encourage you to go to taproot.watch. There's, you can check out the overview. You can see the mining pools and who currently is signaling for the Taproot. And, something that's funny is I've seen a lot of Twitter accounts now starting to put a green block, right, in their name as well, just to kind of signal, a sign that they want to see Taproot passed. And then finally, there's also a section about Taproot. So if you guys want to dive deeper in and understand it a little bit more, we really encourage you to go check it out, do your own due diligence. But definitely interesting, exciting, and great to potentially see one more layer of functionality added to Bitcoin.
Yeah, that'll be great when we can get even more transactions done.
All right. Well, I'm going to drop your screen share, even though you were covering some, valuable, important information, and maybe we'll dive into some. Maybe it's just as valuable, maybe it's not. But first thing, I thought,
I'm hanging up. Bye.
Yeah. And so the first thing is, I just, what are your thoughts right now on what's going on in the alt world? So maybe we'll circle back to Ethereum, but let's talk about Dogecoin. And do you think, is it possible that it could flip Binance Coin? Do you think, will it become in the top 3 at some point?
I mean, it's certainly possible. I think that when you see on the right-hand column that over the last 7 days, Bitcoin is the only asset in the top 10 showing a red line, like it's down over 7 days. That is the cue that, I mean, we're in an alt season. We're in alternative coin season, meaning that, yeah, Bitcoin is down a little bit or sideways from, say, 60 days ago. But eventually people are going to want to sell all of this junk and return it to something valuable like Bitcoin. So if you have all of these other coins and you didn't just buy them yesterday, where you're really not in the money yet, I'd be considering selling them for Bitcoin in the sort of time frame where they're diverging, but in the opposite way that one would expect. Because yes, Dogecoin is being printed at the rate of 14 million coins a day, and there is no cap, and Bitcoin will have a total supply of 21 million. So the likelihood that Dogecoin, which does nothing in particular except speculation today because of the meme nature of it, I don't know that it's going to flip in Binance Coin, because Binance Coin is at least a clone of Ethereum with like functionality, and there's lots of other things going on top of that. But oh man, is it ever? It's heartbreaking to think of the people that are buying this week with the expectation it's going to keep going higher. And I don't know if they're going to get the nerve to sell or when they'll get the nerve to sell. And then at the same time, it's just sad that people can't make better choices.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I've got no idea what the future holds, obviously, either. I wouldn't be shocked, just because it's an entertaining outcome, as Elon Musk sometimes talks about, to see Dogecoin have temporarily flip Binance. But yeah, it seems hard to believe that long term it's going to gain that momentum. But at the same time, there are a lot of pumpers out there pumping Doge as hard as they can to the moon. So they didn't hit their 69 cents on 420, but it seems possible that they could hit it sometime before this crazy bull run tuckers itself out. But one of the things I want to explore, based upon what we're seeing going on in alts and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general, is, to me, what I see going on in the NFT space and with Dogecoin, it can't help me think that a lot of us are just deciding we don't trust fiat currency anymore, and that's the overarching theme here. And that I was sharing, we do a book club with my team. And so the current book that we're reading, I'd encourage anyone at home that hasn't checked it out to check it out, is the Bitcoin Standard. And in there, they explore a lot the idea behind time preference, right? And I can't help but think that right now, when I see so many people gambling with their money, whether we're talking the NFT space or maybe some of the altcoins, I naturally start to think, like, is this a sign that your time preference is so extreme, right? That you're so scared that your dollar is going to be worth less tomorrow than it is today, that you just want to flee into any asset that at least might protect you as a hedge against that inflation. And then pairing on why I think people are going into altcoins so extremely, as well as NFTs, is, again, the hunger to make massive returns in a short period of time, because the assumption is you need that massive return. Like, you need a shit ton of money in order to weather the financial storms, the craziness that's going on in the world. So, this is a tweet that I think NVK put out, or deterministic optimism, and just kind of showing the Bank of Canada and it going burr. And yeah, it's wild. I've been sharing this on my YouTube channel for a while, primarily from the real estate side of things. But like, what's happened since 2020? Like, this graph just looks like a parody, in my opinion, of where it was pre 2020, right? And again, we saw a pretty big jump back in 2006 and 2007, 2008, whenever that was. But just fascinating. Really encourage people to start learning a little bit more about everything that goes on behind the money scene. And I know that you mentioned, Tim, you're starting to dig a little bit more into MMT as well.
Yeah. So I studied politics, and I've had a keen interest in this sort of thing for a long time. And what I can't like where I struggle is trying to square, yes, almost everything that you hear about in the Austrian schools makes sense. But then also everything I hear from MMT also makes sense. So it's like, how do these two worldviews jive? Like, how does it make sense in the long run? Because when we look at this chart, yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Like the steepness of that curve, it's beyond parabolic. It's vertical. Like it's just straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So what to me matters is the relative strength of the dollar, because it's like almost every currency did this. I'd be looking for what currency did not expand in this kind of rate because of COVID or because of the GFC, the financial crisis in 2008. So who hasn't done that? Well, certainly Bitcoin hasn't. That's why I'm here. But if every country has done this same thing, then all we're worried about is the relative strength, because the government has to create the money to then demand it back in taxes. And that's the part that seemed to be missing, that people explain in MMT, that it's not that we had money and then the government taxed us. The government gave us the money and then demanded a percentage of it back in taxes, which is strange. And I'm not even sure I fully understand what it all means in the end. But the only way that steep line is going back down is if they take all the money from us, and which they're going to need to do, it would seem.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that a lot of the stuff that you read from the Austrian school is very straightforward and to me seems natural once you kind of consume it.
Right? Like,
yeah, where on the flip side, when we're looking at modern money theory and the idea that to me, it's just like, it literally just feels like a scam. If you dig too deep into it, it's hard for me to not want to take the Bitcoiner maximalist approach of just like, it's a scam. But I see a couple people had questions here, so I quickly want to hit upon those before I get into the next piece I wanted to chat about. So
sure.
Someone was asking, what was I talking about with a flip Binance? Yeah, what I meant there was just flipping in market cap. So similar to how people talk about Ethereum flipping Bitcoin, they mean like from a market cap standpoint. And that's what I was referring to in regards to Dogecoin potentially flipping Binance coin. Again, I'm not saying it will, but I'm saying that I wouldn't be completely shocked to see it temporarily do that. But that definitely doesn't mean that it should or that it will. But then I saw someone also asking about ETH versus Bitcoin. I don't again, feel free to jump in here, Tim, if you disagree, but I don't think that it's a zero-sum game necessarily. Now, at the same time, for most people, Bitcoin or Ethereum is oftentimes kind of their on-ramp into the alt universe. And so I think that, again, as we see NFTs grow in popularity, and a lot of those are currently Ethereum-based, as well as just some of the other tokens and things based upon Ethereum getting more demand. Who knows what happens in the short term? I know that I don't know nearly as much about Ethereum as I should, but I know that there's the new token coming up and speculation around whether that's going to be good, bad, or ugly for the future. And I think the key thing is understanding, I think when you really start to read into this, that I think a lot of the Bitcoin maximalists, when they're not making memes or jokes, they actually have some very fundamental arguments underneath what they're saying. And, I'd encourage you, Jesse, if you want to go check out Michael Saylor or anyone else like that, I think they've got some great arguments. BTC Sessions, the YouTube channel, has amazing discussions and, different influencers in the space sharing their opinion. But I don't personally see it as a zero-sum game. I think that both can go up. Now, the chances of both going up lockstep with each other consistently, I think, is relatively low. I think that we'll see times where they decouple and move independently. But I don't think that Ethereum going up means Bitcoin has to go down. So I don't see it as a zero-sum game.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Not a zero-sum game. I'm still a maximalist, but I think that there's use cases for Ethereum that will never be possible on Bitcoin, but those use cases may not be palatable to Bitcoiners, and that's fine. If it's
and I think a lot of people are approaching them as different types of investment vehicles, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're viewing Bitcoin as something that is that paragon of stability, like from a no one's going to fuck with it, no one's going to really mess with it standpoint. There's not a bunch of insiders that can just change the rules or dump it or change the rules once it gets to proof of stake. Again, I think that there's some really interesting similarities that people make, or analogies people make between the fiat system and central banking, and essentially any coin that was pre-mined or has a group of insiders or a CEO or the ability to really direct it. So again, I think so many people have to do more due diligence in every direction to really do this. But I think the key is, if you haven't done deep research on this subject matter, I'd encourage everyone to only be playing with gambling money. Even those of you that are like, hey, Matt's talking about Bitcoin, I should just go blindly buy it. I'd encourage you to only buy it with gambling money at the start. Hopefully use that as a reason to force yourself to learn more. If you find yourself buying any coin right now, including Bitcoin, literally just based out of FOMO alone, one, you're not going to have the stamina and the fortitude to see it through the ups and downs, regardless of what coin you're in. And two, again, if you don't have any underlying reason to be in it other than that FOMO, it's purely gambling. It's just gambling by a different name, in my opinion. All right. Well, let's move on to a different type of gambling. And so I was chatting with you earlier yesterday and today, Tim, about these meepits. So long story short, there's these things called meepits. I won't spend a lot of time here for the audience on them, but all this shit is fascinating to me in one way or another. Essentially, what happened was I owned a CryptoPunk, and this project was done by the same people that have Larva Labs. So as a byproduct of that, it turns out I could get a free meepit if I paid for the gas fees. So I got a meepit. This is my meepit. So it seems pretty cool. All things considered, it looks decent. The suit feels very fitting for me, and yet the sneakers make it mildly casual. Again, feels very on point. But I'd be remiss if I didn't say I wish I would have pulled this meepit instead. And so the reason I wish I would have pulled this meepit is, if we look at the history behind the offers, we'll actually see that within the first day of being pulled, there was a 200 ETH offer on it. So those of you not good at math, just know that that's more than 600,000 USD. And I was like, oh my God, like, did this guy get lucky? How many of these does he own? Is this the only one? And so I dug into his OpenSea account, and it turns out he actually owns 3 CryptoPunks, and he pulled 3 meepits. And one of the meepits he pulled was actually this crazy ass one. Well, not that. I wish mine was the crazy ass one. But this crazy ass one that, where'd we go here? Where he's already had a 200 ETH bid on it. And again, what was blowing my mind was the fact that there has been a handful of these things that were just minted yesterday, trading hands for 100 ETH or more. And, you can see the difference, right? Not a single offer on this one, a 1.33 ETH on this one. And right now, the best offer is 101 ETH on it. So this shit's just wild, guys. I don't even really have a point behind any of this. I'm just saying that, like, I'm playing with gambling money, so it's fun right now, but I think it's so important to understand. And Alex Becker actually had a great video recently on this channel talking about this. The vast majority of people that got rich in crypto were rich before. So straight up, unless you're one of the insiders, the day one people, you were from the very beginning, odds are you already were relatively rich. And then you brought some gambling money, which was a decent sum for you, and played around in this space and then saw exponential returns. I think the stories of individuals that try and just catch a straight up chart that turn into ultra millionaires because of crypto, at least up until currently, hasn't been that strong. Dogecoin is maybe the closest thing to an exception because of its meteoric rise. But outside of that, I think that Alex really had a great point that either it's people involved in the project. So you were mining from day one, or you were mining the moment there was an exchange, or whatever the case may be, or you decide to build a business, right? Like you start Binance and you make money, or sorry, not Binance. I meant to say, Coinbase and those different platforms, right? And again, you're able to make money from that. And again, you can then use that money to go gamble more in the crypto space. and however you choose to gamble. But I think it's just important to understand. I see so many people just hoping that they can put $50 into a random altcoin and then they're going to become the next crypto billionaire. I think that understand a lot of us, again, if you haven't done your research, if you don't really believe in the project, you're going to be the dude that sells your Dogecoin at 10 cents and is high-fiving yourself for being a genius because you got a 10x return because you bought it for a penny and sold for 10. So again, it's really the individuals that either it's literally just house money, they're just playing with money they can afford to lose, and they were already rich, and that's why the sums add up so big. Or it's going to be people that really believe in the project, they've been there day one, or they build some other sort of project around the space, and they're able to benefit from that. So I just really want to highlight that because, again, I know I'm talking a lot about crypto. I'm having fun talking about crypto. It's kind of an interesting thing. Again, I think Bitcoin is different. I think it's special. But all the other stuff going on is still fun, but I view it as gambling. And I'd encourage any of you guys at home to view it the same way until you've really done your due diligence. The number of people that tell me they've made 5 figures in crypto and yet have never read a white paper, it just sends it hurts my soul a little bit, guys. It's like telling me that you're a real estate millionaire, but you've never ran the financials on a single building. I'm like, cool, but how replicatable is this? And that's my challenge to anyone. How replicatable is whatever strategy you're currently implementing doing? How much do you really believe in that project, or how much are you just hoping to get rich quick? So I don't know if I've really left you anything to talk about here, Tim, but I just need to get that monologue off my chest.
No, that's okay. The only thing that came to mind as you were showing those bids for the me bits was, do you see any parallels between the real estate market right now? There's folks that are very upset of the closed bid system, the blind bid system for Ontario real estate, but then those bids are public. But at the same time, we don't know that those are legitimate bids. There's a market bid. If I had a lot of money, had a lot of ETH, I could come put a bid on your me bit with the promise that you never accept my bid, please.
Yeah, or that we exchange bids, right?
Yeah,
and we
exactly.
I offer you 100, you offer me 100, we both agree to it. I have no doubt that there's crazy amounts of let's call it insider trading, although that kind of bastardized the term because right now there's no real restrictions against doing that. But yeah, I would be shocked to learn that there's not tons of phony bids, that there's not tons of price inflation through these phony bids. Also understand some of these projects have large insider holdings, right? So I think Larva Labs, they've been pretty good, in my opinion, with their community and their audience compared to every other NFT project or just about every other one. But there still is, even with Larva Labs and CryptoPunks or Meepits, there's a handful of accounts that own a lot. And those accounts can move things. And also oftentimes those accounts become influencers just because of the amount of influence they have in that community or because the amount of paper wealth they have. And then again, they're able to help move markets in that degree. So I think it's a really interesting time. I think a lot of people, there's a lot of blind money out there right now just following Pied Pipers that are going to get hurt at some point, presumably. But maybe it turns out the government's just going to keep going burr, and we'll just keep seeing wild inflation and everything in the digital asset space. All right, guys. Well, if you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, hit subscribe if you're new to the channel, and let us know what are you currently trying to hold on for dear life as it goes to the moon. I'd be curious to find out. But again, really appreciate you guys hanging out. How's a super sticker work? I just see someone did a super sticker. I don't even know what that is. Does something come up when I do that? Oh, well, anyways, appreciate the $3, Jesse. I don't even know what a super sticker is because we're streaming through StreamYard, but thank you. Appreciate it. And what was this other comment here? Reminds me of e-commerce. Had some friends in early days that got some quick money when times were easy, but they fade out long term because the knowledge of the fundamentals weren't there, rode a wave of luck. Yeah, absolutely. And again, I'm not saying that people won't get super rich by doing that. So again, there's always going to be anecdotal stories of individuals that go from zero to crazy amounts. But I think for the average individual, it's so much easier to make real wealth in this space if you really believe in the project and you're willing to ride the ups and the downs throughout. All right, guys. Well, again, appreciate you watching this video, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.